I'd like to expand your knowledge of the history of psychology beyond your readings today by exploring three significant transformative factors. In other words, three events that really changed the field of psychology. The first being the 1920 methodological revolution. Now, before this revolution, many psychologists were publishing many theories. They were writing papers and filling books, and books were filling bookcases. But the science of psychology was not advancing anywhere near how it advanced after this revolution. Because theories are like ideas. Everybody has one. How do we know which are on the right track and which are not? Which paths to pursue without testing? So the methodological revolution was based on measuring and testing theories with data. And this started an area of psychology called behaviorism, an area that mostly wiped out other areas of study for many years. The behaviors made it clear that we could only measure, in other words, get data on what we can see, which is only behavior, right? In fact, in the US in particular, it was considered unscientific and out of vogue to study anything other than behavior, such as, for instance, thought processes for many years during behaviorist rule. It was not until World War II that other forms of study became more accepted in the United States, largely because of two things. First, the US military turned to psychologists to study and produce ways of identifying recruits with personality traits of good leaders, and to study persuasion, to study obedience. This was the beginning of an area of psychology that is called applied psychology. Some researchers work on expanding general knowledge still today, but others now work to apply that knowledge in the real world. The other significant influence of World War II was immigration. Remember, in the United States, the stigma for studying anything other than behavior was exceptionally strong. Not so much with other countries. The United States saw a huge influx in European psychologists immigrating to the US, fleeing prosecution, bringing with them honorable attempts at scientifically studying more than just human behavior, bringing such attempts back into vogue, you might say. And thank goodness, because around 1970, the prior invention of the computer finally made its impact on psychology by making something very fascinating possible. And that was studying people's minds, their thought processes. How did the computer do this? By giving us ways to measure thoughts in milliseconds. For instance, we can actually measure how close a group and its stereotype are in your mind by flashing some words on a computer and then measuring how quickly you recognize these words in milliseconds. For instance, we can flash the word Asians and then after that the phrase good at math. Many people will recognize the phrase good at math more quickly when it follows the word Asians than if it follows another group like Caucasians. Wow, pretty cool stuff. Just think, the behaviorists wouldn't have touched this because they thought that thought processes were a big black box that nobody could see inside, so no one could measure or study. And that was true then. But thanks largely to some immigrant psychologists, Not everybody gave up trying. And thanks to the computer and what is now called the cognitive revolution, we can now study thought processes. All right, now let's see if you can keep all your old white guys straight from your readings. This is a 2-minute challenge, guys. Go. All right, so let's quickly go over these answers. See how you did on this. Number one is Pavlov, one of the most famous behaviors, right? Pavlov. Number two is Maslow. Maslow was a humanistic psychologist who thought humans were innately good and only were corrupted by society. Number three is Wundt, and that is spelled with a W. Wundt in Germany, who also started the first psychology lab. Number four is Neisser, who began cognitive psychology. And number five is Freud, who began clinical psychology. Number six is Skinner, another one of the most famous behaviorists. Number seven is Wertheimer, and that also is spelled with a W, by the way, who formed the Gestalt School of Psychology. Number eight is James, right here in the United States. And number nine is Rogers, a humanistic psychologist who believed that clients should have equal status and equal involvement in their therapy.